Welcome to another episode of In the Nude. Today I want to talk about mourning the loss of the dream. I feel like it's fitting with the time frame, with everything that's been happening in the world. What is it that we're mourning? What is it, the loss? This can apply in different ways, but let's talk practically right now. Do you find yourself in a lot of conversations with people who don't agree with you? People that you care about, people you want to have reconciliation with, you want to have alignment with, you want them to just like, you send them an article, you send them a video, you send them something, you're trying to get them to see, maybe this will make the difference. Maybe this will cut it through. Maybe they'll understand if they hear it in this particular way. Does that resonate? I find this to be true in my life. It used to be with a lot of different people, and now it's a lot smaller number, but there's still some people in my life that I do this with. It's okay. It's understandable. You care for those people and you feel such conflict, such disjointed, such this like you're in a chasm on two tectonic plates and they keep hitting and you're afraid of the volcano that will erode everything to the point of no return. Only you already know it's there. You know it because you have these moments of just like complete defeat and sorrow. You know it because you'll have this conversation and you feel such sadness at the fact that they just can't hear the impact of their actions or lack of actions. They can't hear the what their viewpoint means in contrast to your viewpoint and the discrepancy there. They might want to agree to disagree, and you say there's not an agreeing to disagree to humanity, right? You have this and you see it, you feel it, and it hits so home. But then there's these moments where it's not there, and you love them, and you see the good features, and it makes you feel like maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's okay. Maybe we can get past this, whether this is friendship or a paramour relationship or a parent, it doesn't matter. You have this. And it's heartbreaking because you don't want to face it. I don't like facing it. Facing the mourning, facing the fairy tale we told ourselves. I've had to do this once in my life in a really big way with my husband. I had this forever. I had this always. I had this story of the us. And there was both the loss of living the life and the separation that occurred, but the thing that hurt the hardest was really finding out that it was a fairy tale that I played on my head myself. I played a trick. I played a fantasy. I took meaning and words and I applied it and I painted this beautiful picture because I wanted the picture and I thought the picture was real because it was real to me, but it wasn't real. And coming to that understanding, coming to that, pulling the glasses off and seeing that it was all just a play. There were parts and there were characters that I scripted, and I did it to myself. I find this to be true in these same situations. In that relationship, friendship or otherwise, that you're sitting there, you're constantly trying to get them to see, trying to get them to understand. You're doing it. You're playing a fairy tale on yourself. And you're looking at the rose bush and you're like, but there's so many beautiful flowers. But you keep getting cut by the thorns. And you keep taking those thorns, and you're trying to braid them into a crown for your fairy tale. The prince and the princess, whether it's friendship or otherwise, you have this picture. But if you just left the bramble and just witnessed it for what it was, both the thorns and the flowers, and it can be beautiful in its own right, and it could have been perfect in its own season, but sometimes it's a season. It's meant to dwindle into the next. And that's a hard reality to face, no matter the relationship. It's the same as when you want to have this like closeness, this ability to communicate with your parents or siblings or family members or whatever they might be. You have this desire to be able to bridge the gap, to be able to communicate, but it doesn't work. You keep hitting this threshold, and maybe you can talk about small things, but maybe you can talk about 80%, but that 20% isn't a small thing for you. it's hard to face the fairy tale that we've written for ourselves. Every time I do it, it's heartbreaking. Every time I do it, I don't want to. Every time I do it, I'm like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the 80% is enough. And it's not that we have to have perfect alignment with another person. It's not that we don't need to be in an echo chamber of our own thoughts, but we need to be able to be in a place where we feel aligned with our life. And maybe that person's not going to be a best friend anymore. Or maybe that person's going to be a family member you see only on holidays, but that's the extent of how you relate to them. Or maybe it's far enough that you don't relate to them anymore. I don't know what the thing is, but I do know it starts like most things with accepting what is. If you find yourself having to sit there and try to like work the conversation and work the thing to be able to have them see your truth, if you have to fold it over and reinterpret it and knead it into a new type of bread and serve it like a cake instead of a bread, or if you have to get a different video and a different video and you're trying to constantly get them to see and they're not seeing, you see where this is going, right? You're not going to be the person that gets them to see, and they may not be willing to see, and maybe it's not their time to see, and maybe it's a different timeline, and maybe you aren't the person that will get them there. Maybe that isn't your role. Maybe that isn't your place, and maybe you keep continuing to shove yourself in there is shoving yourself into a thorn bush. And that sucks because you really love the flowers. And it's fair. The flowers are beautiful. You have so much fun. But you can't forget the reality of what is. And facing that reality is where you can make your choices. Make an honest choice about the fact that, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to keep getting pricked. But at least you're aware of it and you know what you're choosing. Or maybe you choose to appreciate the thorn bush but don't touch it. Create some distance. Maybe you walk away altogether. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out in my world with each of the different relationships that this happens with. And you don't have to know it overnight, but I do think you have to be willing to mourn the fairy tale you told yourself, whether you're going to stay there. You've got to accept that it's the thorn bush with the flowers on it. If you're going to walk away or you can create a distance, it's willingly looking and seeing what's there and willingly sitting in the uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's not a fun process. But that feeling, that desire, that known that you have in it that you like so much, all those beautiful flowers, all those moments of joy and connection you love. What if you're willing to accept that thorn bush right where it was? And you could still appreciate all the beauty, but without taking the pricks, by creating distance or seeing it from afar even further. And what if you then got to find the wildflower field that's more fitting for you, or the azalea bush that gives you flowers without thorns? An analogy breaks down at a certain point, but you get the point. Maybe there's something more that's meant for you, but it takes you having an uncomfortable walk. And maybe that more for you starts with, instead of looking for an external worthiness and connection, finding a pathway where you love yourself and you take care of yourself, because I find we pull into ourselves. I find we draw in the energy we exude. So when I'm in a place of anxious and grasping for control and dysregulated, I draw in more people who are like that, versus when I show up in the world grounded and authentic, I start seeing and drawing into my life people who match that energy. The more I care for myself and love myself, the more I build and meet randomly or re-meet a lot of the times. They're people that I met before, but I didn't have any kind of connection with because I wasn't on that energy level. I wasn't there and I wasn't able to connect with what they were having to say, but then I somehow re-bump into them, re-communicate with them, and I'm able to found this new relationship. Sometimes the shutting of the door, as it were, the walking away from the beautiful bush that I've loved, allows you the opportunity to get into the uncomfortable, and in the uncomfortable, see the different. We often want our life to look different, but in order for our life to look different, we have to be willing to show up differently. We have to be willing for it to be different. And different is unknown, and unknown is uncomfortable and scary. But it's also the only path to that thrive, to that joy, to that feeling like just completely embodied and aligned. And I don't say this as a person who has it accomplished. I have people in my life that I'm still trying to figure out how to mitigate, how to mourn that fairy tale. How far can I go and still maintain what needs to be maintained? How do I balance all of that? I don't know. I don't have it all figured out. It's a test case. It's a scientific method of throwing the spaghetti against the wall. But I do know that each time I come across a realization that it's another relationship that has served its season, it's one of those things that I wish I could more easily see it as the season, right? I love summer, not because it's hot, but because I get to watch my kids enjoy the water, and I get to go to the beach, and I love the ocean, and being able to get into the water, it calms me so well. But I don't mourn when the summer ends because I love the fall. I love the season changing, the crisp weather, that being able to pull up my boots and sweaters. And yes, I'm as basic can be. I love some pumpkin spice. I love the baking. I love the crafting. I love the colors of the fall. I wish that I could have that attitude a bit more. And it's one of the reasons I love about fall, is because fall is such a cathartic and beautiful, emblematic, natural example of how beautiful it can be to let things die, to let it go and let new life grow. We fight it so much in life, but nature shows us it's a part of life. And so I'm challenging myself and you in the process with, maybe we just start with really radically owning the fact that we're standing in the middle of a rose bush, holding it close to our body and getting ourselves cut up simply because we love the flowers. But we keep expecting the flowers to be the only thing that's there, and we're surprised by getting cut by those thorns. Maybe we just start there. And then we ask ourselves, what do we want to be true about our life? Do we want to continue being cut up by this relationship, cut up by this disalignment? Are the flowers beautiful enough to overcome? Is it enough flowers and little thorns that it's something we're going to stick around with? Or do we need to back up and create some space where we can appreciate and enjoy the flowers, but without having physical contact with the thorns? And a relationship that might look like hanging out and creating really firm boundaries about what you talk about or you don't talk about, or just simply how much time or proximity you have. But it might be that you have to walk completely away and you just get to see them from a distance. For me, my relationship with my ex, there's so much that's beautiful in that human. But a lot of it was cutting me up. I can't fully walk away, and I don't know that I would want to, because I love so much of the beautiful flowers of that person. I just can't let myself get anywhere near, because it was just too much cutting up for me. And that wasn't an easy choice, but it was a simple one because of a question I asked myself. How would I feel if my kids had a marriage like that? And it was simple what the answer was. It was simple to know what to do. It wasn't easy. And not every relationship does that fit with. But often it's a good question to ask yourself. Maybe it's not kids for you. Maybe it's a little sister, a little brother, or maybe it's a best friend. I don't know. But someone you care about and feel protective of. That's a good question for me that I do, is how would I feel if, and I name one of my kids, was in this situation? What would I want for them? Because sometimes it's really hard for us to see how we can care for ourselves and see ourselves as worthy enough for that, especially if you had some trauma in your young years, as I'm sure we have. But it's an important question, because even if we struggle with seeing our value, it doesn't mean we don't have it. And we're learning how to do that. And the more we show up for ourselves, the more we take actions that prove to ourselves we have that value, that worth, we can feel it more, because feelings are not always based in fact, right? We can feel guilty because we were told to be guilty. That doesn't make us guilty. Some things that I do is I'm patient with myself. I have to face the radicalness, the acceptance of my situation over and over and over again. Let it sit. Ask myself, am I ready? Can I handle walking away? Because as much as you can see something, I don't know if you've ever had somebody you loved in an abusive situation. No matter how much you can tell them what they're worth, you can't have them walk away. You can't force them to walk away until they're ready and they're willing to stand up for themselves, because they have to do it for themselves, because they're going to have to maintain it. That same thing is true with yourself. And no matter how much you want to judge yourself for not being able to walk away, you can't force yourself to be where you're not yet. And no matter amount of shaming or judgment isn't going to help. But sitting with yourself like you would that friend, being like, you've got to make this choice for yourself, but please know, you're worth more. You deserve more. You can do that for yourself. The walking away is never going to be easy. The owning and mourning of what you thought it could be. You thought it was going to be your best friend for life. You thought it was going to be your partner for life. You thought it was going to be, you were going to eventually have that great relationship with your parent like other people have, where they change and they grow and they see. It's hard. It's not fun. I want the fairy tale for you too. I want the fairy tale for me. I want it to be the pretty picture. But the fun thing is when we let go of the fairy tale we painted, the mirage in the desert that we have keep walking towards, when we let go of that, we can actually find the oasis. We can actually find the fairy tale. We can actually make it. We can be it for ourselves or find it in another once we make it for ourselves. The more that I make my own fairy tale within myself, I become my own true love. Write a love story with myself. Own every part of me and love every part of me and all its weird quirks. The more I know that in a world where I ever was going to be in a relationship, I'd be able to find somebody who showed up the same way I do, right? Because in a world where you can love the way you do and you can care the way you do, there has to be somebody else in the world who can too, right? Don't you deserve someone who loves you enough to love you like you love other people? One of the ways to get there is to start loving yourself the way you love other people. That's at least how I started, as asking myself how I'd show up for another person. I find this really fitting right now because there's a lot of conversations that are coming up with all the conflict over the tragic losses that are occurring because of gun violence. The elevated feelings and emotions that people have in particular avenues, and not necessarily seeing the global scope, and not seeing the effect or negatives of them not being able to apply that Venn diagram over. Because it's another door, it's another punch in the gut, as it were, of facing open. The world is in a place of constantly giving you very big fuel to see the true colors of the people who aren't being able to see through the propaganda and the thought process of what their perspective is and the groups they hear around themselves. So I find that I have to create distance quite frequently in these unfoldings of life. And with each one, it hurts. With each one, it's not easy. But I know with each loss, I'm creating space for something new, something beautiful, like the changing of the leaves. So I challenge you. It's slow. It hasn't been full out fall, but take time to look at any leaf in your area that's changing, that's starting to change colors or wither or turn brown. And notice the fact that you can appreciate the beauty of the fall and the loss. And be willing to sit in that beautiful uncomfortable within yourself. And know you're not alone.